So that if they win, we say, are we with you? If Muslim win, I'm with you, trying to hold the stick somehow in the middle. That he was rebuked for that action because that's an act of hypocrisy. Take a stand. Whatever you believe is right, side with right. But don't try to just play on who's going to win because that's too opportunistic. It's not a good or befitting something for any believer, not only in Islam, for that matter. Again, I mentioned this monkey. The Rabbi quoted verse 552, just 5 verses later. It says, why? Then there is the general Quranic context. How could the Quran say don't take them for friends if it says you treat them in kindness and justice? In fact, the original term that appeared in the Quran is more than kindness. Is more than kindness. And it says tabarruhum for the Arabic. And tabarr comes from an Arabic term which means the ultimate of good character and good behavior. It is the same term used in the Quran and Hadith to describe one's obligation towards his parents. And relationship with parents is not only kindness, it is respect and love even if they have a different religion. So you get kindness, respect, and love. The word qist, most translators of the Quran says justice. It is more than justice. Because qist means I give you more than your right. Justice, I give you your right, no less, but no more. Qist, that I give you more. To soften hearts like gifts and their occasions or whatever. So even then, according to classical scholar Ibn al-Arabi, it's more than justice. So more than justice, more than respect and kindness. And then says, but you can be friend. And again, the same kind of thing applies to interfaith marriage. I should have mentioned that here too. A man is supposed to love his wife, right? Which is more intimate, marital relationship or friendship? I'm saying, of course, normatively speaking. Some couples might be at each other's throat. But in the normative case, really, the usual normative requirement or expectation, which is much closer relation? Marital relation or friendship? Obviously marital. So how come you have that affectionate marital relationship and then you say, my wife, I love you, you're so close to me, but you ain't my friend. What kind of conclusion is this? 5. But, okay, fine. But how do you answer that question? We heard a lot in the media, the term infidel, a very insulting and derogatory term. And a lot of people are saying the Quran describes Jews and Christians as infidels. Right or wrong? Capital W, wrong. First of all, infidel. Which language is that? English. How do you know its meaning? English lexicon. You know what the English lexicon say about the term infidel? There are various meanings, but the meaning that relate to relationship here, you know what? One who does not have a religion. Second, one who does not believe in God. That's how you get it in the English dictionary. Now, does the Quran really imply anywhere that Jews and Christians are non-believers in God? The answer, I quote you that verse, very famous verse in the Quran, in chapter 29, Al-Ankabut, verse 46. It's speaking about dialogue with the people of the book, and it ends by saying, tell the people of the book, i.e., tell them, O Muslims, wa ilahuna wa ilahukum wahid. Your God, O Jews and Christians, and our God is one and the same. We can argue theology, but it is a fact that anyone who has the slightest knowledge about comparative religion is that Jews, Christians, and Muslims share in the belief in the one true God. How they understand that about that God, there might be important differences, but the notion of one God is accepted by 3. Now, does the English lexical meaning, people who don't believe in God, apply to Jews and Christians? By the text of the Quran, the answer is a big no. Second, it says the one who doesn't have a religion. Well, in the case of Jews and Christians, they do have a religion, of course, according to the Quran. But some people say, but isn't that discriminatory against other communities, like idol worshippers or non-believers in anything? How do you classify those? The answer comes right in the Quran. Even the idol worshippers are not called infidels in the English meaning. Evidence, Surah Al-Kafirun, chapter 109. Again, without understanding the background, one cannot appreciate it. You know, some of the Arabs, idolatrous Arabs, came to make a compromise with the Prophet in Mecca. They were disturbed about the spread of Islam, even though it was slow. But they wanted to stop that mission. So they go to the Prophet and say, all right, how about instead of having that conflict, we are willing to worship Allah, this one God you're talking about, one time, but then you worship our idols another time. Compromise. You know, but that compromise is like what? You know those two ladies who came to Solomon, Prophet Solomon, and they're fighting whether this says it's my baby, that says, it's my baby. So he said, all right, we'll cut the baby right and justly cut it into half, and every woman take one half of the baby. That's the compromise, a dysfunctional compromise. It's not like compromise by sharing my loaf of bread with you. You take half, we can both survive. That's dysfunction. It doesn't work. So when the Quran came to reject that offer outright, you know what it says at the end? Lakum dinukum waliya din. So in the context, if you know the history of it, of idolaters, Arab, their faith, the idol worship, which is shunned in Islam, is called a deen, religion. You know, in the Arabic language, the word deen, as the linguists say, says ma yadinu bihi al-insan, anything that a person believes in. You believe in idols, you have a deen. I would carry that one step further. I said, if a person say, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in any religion, I don't believe in any spirituality. I said, no, you have a deen also. Not in the common meaning, because that's what you believe. You see, I say, I believe in God. He believes. He believes that there's no God, right? That's a belief, isn't it? So according to even the technical meaning of it, everybody has a religion, so the word infidel doesn't apply to anyone. Okay, but somebody might say, wait a minute. Just like the question of holy war and jihad, that some people thought they are the same, just arguing terms. But doesn't the Quran use a term kafir for a singular and kuffar in plural, and the verb kufr to refer to people who did not accept Islam? He said, all right, kufr is different, just like we said jihad and holy war are different. And the only way to understand it objectively is to start from basics. That's Arabic language and Quranic language. And we begin with both. One, in the Arabic language, just like we said, jihad, JHD, kufr and kuffar and all the terms, singular, plural, adjective, nouns, verbs, have also three common letters. K, in Arabic, ka, fa, ra, without vowel sounds. Like in English, it sounds like K, F, R. You know what it means in Arabic lexicon. The most common meaning is cover up. Kafar, cover up. You can remember it this way. Kafar, cover up. Okay? It has also another meaning, which means rejection, to reject something. It has also a meaning of being unthankful to God. Unthankful. Because it actually comes from cover up, because you're covering up and concealing your indebtedness to God who gave you all that you have. So it's also a sort of spiritual cover up, truth cover up, you might say. How is it used in the Quran? I'm sure even some of the Muslim audience here might get shocked when I tell them there is good kufr. There is good required kufr. That a Muslim, by definition, must be a good kafir. I remember one time I gave that lecture, it was a large number of people, and there was a whole section for the sister. As soon as I said that, I heard many of them say, Astaghfirullah. What a heresy. I said, you people should read the Quran. I give you the evidence right from the Quran. We said one meaning of KFR means what? To reject, right? The Quran itself, that you should have that kufr. فَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ, the second surah of the Quran. فمن يكفر بالطاغوت ويؤمن بالله فقد استمسك بالعروة الوثقى. I hope those who don't understand Arabic, excuse me, because I want to communicate effectively by way of also intra-faith dialogue that I was saying, because some of these might be new to some. فمن يكفر بالطاغوت, which basically use the term kufr, a derivative. That means anyone who rejects false gods and believe in the true God, he's the one who's holding to the tight rope of God that will never break. That good kufr or not? Definitely. It's good rejection. But rejection of what? Rejection of falsehood is kufr. So it has a positive meaning. Secondly, it has also a neutral meaning, neither good nor bad. You read it in the Quran, كَمَثَلِ غَيْثٍ أَعْجَبَ الْكُفَّارَ نَبَاتُهُ. Describing when the rain falls, it would be pleasant to kuffar. Who are those kuffar? Farmers. In this context, farmers. Why is the farmer called kafir? Plural kuffar. Because they put the seed in the ground and cover it up with soil. That's a neutral meaning. Thirdly, it could be a negative meaning, but there are differing degrees of negativity. We said that one meaning of kufr also, which in a sense is cover up also, is to be unthankful to God. Chapter 31 in the Quran, it makes the contrast between thankfulness and unthankfulness to Allah. Right? It says, وَمَنْ شَكَرَ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ النَّاسِ وَمَنْ كَفَرَ. So shakar and kafar. That means the one who's thankful to Allah, it's good for their own destiny, for their own good, for their soul. And the one who's unthankful, Allah doesn't need them to be thankful anyway. See? So in that sense, it is negative, but does that negativity make the person outside of the pale of Islam? No. Tell me anyone here who says that I am from any religion, I am thankful enough to God. Alhamdulillah that we don't have anyone who's so proud, to say that I'm thankful. No matter what you do, you'll never be thankful enough. So in a way, there are degrees of that, of course, but it is negative still. There is another negative meaning. What does it mean, rejected? Does it mean rejection of God? In some cases, yes, and that's the most serious one. Like when the Quran speaks about the story of Prophet Noah or Abraham, okay, and speak about people knowing, admitting that there is God, but still out of their pride and insolence, they say, but will not believe, no matter what. That's the most serious one. But there is kufr also in a different degree. When the Jews, for example, refused to accept Jesus as a prophet of Allah, or at least from our perspective, when they rejected him, did they reject belief in God? No. They believed in God, but they simply did not believe in one of the prophets of God, that contemporary prophet for them. Muslims today can also say that Jews and Christians are kafirs. Kafir is in what sense? That they rejected belief in Prophet Muhammad, that we believe is the last prophet for all humanity. But it's their right to reject. So they are kuffar in that sense. People sometimes mix up the variety of contextual meanings without trying to understand in what conditions, in what context these terms have been used. Now, a sixth one. Some people say, and again, people with especially political agendas, that there is inherent hatred in Islam. Say, all right, maybe between Muslim and Christian there might be, sometimes conflict, sometimes good relation, but there is very severe inherent hatred in Islam of Jews. And here again they use Muslims versus Islam, or Palestinians versus, this is another issue also. Take the whole community and attribute it to the faith itself. Is it true that Jews are favored with a special kind of hatred? First of all, there is nothing called hatred in the Quran because of religion, but because of action, whether in the name of religion or not. The evidence given. They say, in the Quran says, لَتَجِدَنَّ أَشَدَّ النَّاسِ عَدَاوَةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الْيَهُودَ وَالَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا. They quote only the first part of the verse because the second part is favorable to Christians, so they don't have to bother if they want to give a bad image of Islam. But let me give you the full verse. It says, you will find, addressing the Prophet ﷺ, that people who have the most enmity to Muslims are the Jews and the idolatrous. Jews and the idolatrous, and the part that they omit. And you will find the closest to you in love, or the closest to them, to believer, to Muslims in love, are those who say we are Christians. That is because among them there are priests and monks, and they are not proud. And when they hear what has been revealed to the Prophet, i.e. Prophet Muhammad, you will feel that their eyes are flowing with tears of the truth they realized. Of course, that's something positive, good feeling between Muslims and Christians, so they don't have to put that. Okay. But let's go back to this. Does this speak about a general rule or relationship all the time between Jews and Christians? But to start with, why should the Quran, that is the revelation of Allah, why should Allah be prejudiced against any particular group of his people, whether male over female or Jews or Christians or anyone else? Why? If this is true, if this were true, you go to the Quran, you find that Prophet Moses is mentioned with great deal of respect and adoration. His name appeared in the Quran even more than the frequency of appearance of the name of Prophet Muhammad himself. The book that he received from God in its originality is called the Torah, containing Hudan wa Nur, guidance and light, the original revelation. Why? They say Prophet Muhammad was anti-Semitic. That's funny. Prophet Muhammad was purer Semite than many Jews today. The Arabs are also Semite, but when we hear the term anti-Semitism today, which is a bad thing, no question. Everybody thinks that anti-Semitism is just one group of Semites are Jews, not Muslims. A lot of Muslims are Semites. Arabs are purer Semites because at one time, Judaism spread in Central Asia among people who were not actually from Palestine or from the Middle East. So why anti-Semitism if the Prophet himself is Semite? Unless you use the term that some people, extremists within the Jewish community, use, self-hating Jew. So they may say, self-hating Semite. Why? Why is that? There's nothing like this in the Quran. Yes, the Quran does criticize Jews sometimes, not Judaism. Yes, the Quran does criticize Christians sometimes, not the teaching of Christ. But also, yes, the Quran criticizes some Muslims as well. Look at the rebuke Muslims received after some battles or actions. The criticism is not a broad something about religion, it is of action, whether Muslim, Christian, or Jewish or not. It is surprising to see that the Quran, for example, condemned the Jews who broke the Sabbath. Go and read the Hebrew scripture that's regarded as a great blasphemy according to Judaism. The Quran didn't go beyond what Jews themselves consider inappropriate or in the true teaching of Christ. They deviated from it in, again, the way that God expressed that fact. So why is that? So much for the question of logic and basis. But again, connected historically. Is that an address that all Jews at all time will be most hateful of Muslims? Let us remember, before even we try to interpret that verse in the Quran, that Muslims believe in the Quran as the verbatim word of Allah, dictated word for word, and there is ample evidence historically it is preserved in its intact shape from the time of the Prophet until today. Therefore, if there is any statement in the Quran that someone, because of misunderstanding, tried to prove that it is unfactual or false factual after 14 centuries, even after 20 centuries, that would put the credibility of the Quran in question. The Quran does not state anything that's false. If indeed that statement was meant to say that Jews at all times and all places would be the most, the worst enemies of Muslims, as compared with Christian, for example, then historically that is not true. Are you aware why that's not true historically? Number one, under the Caliph al-Ma'mun in the House of Wisdom in Baghdad in the 8th century, it is known historically that this was the ultimate of tolerance and acceptance. Jews, Christians, Muslims, Magians, and people of all religions, under the patronage of the caliphs, were giving all kinds of scholarships and facilities to research together to preserve the Greek classics and add and preserve scientific knowledge. Were there enmity there? There were difference, religious and otherwise, but there were no enmity. They were working hand in hand. In Spain, under Muslim Spain, under Muslim rule, the great universities that were regarded like the jewel of Europe at the time of the so-called Dark Ages. There was thriving civilization at the so-called Dark Ages. It was dark only locally in certain areas. Again, the same thing happened. Muslim, Jews, and Christians were working together. Many of the caliphs appointed Jewish rabbis, especially as ministers of finance and treasury. It looks like throughout history, Greenspan and Bernanke seem to have some knack with the notion of business. There was one case when the caliph appointed a Jewish rabbi as prime minister, to the point that some Muslims were saying there is so much tolerance that given our numbers, the minorities are taking even more big positions than we as Muslims. So it is false to say that historically speaking, Jews have been the most enemies of Islam. But the same misunderstanding applied to the second part of the same verse. It speaks about those who are closest in love to Muslims. Does that apply to Christians throughout history? How about the Crusades and the Inquisition, which victimized both Muslims and Jews? Does it speak about a general statement? In fact, Muslims are being killed more by Christian hand than by Jewish hand. Is it not true? Read about the history of the Crusades and Inquisition. But that's not true Christianity, not true teaching. But I'm saying, factually speaking, not all Christians are like that. So the statement then must be understood in its context. And there is evidence in the Quran and the lifetime of the Prophet that shows that it actually meant that at the time of the Prophet, the people who fought against Islam, most were not Christians, but were Jews and idolatrous Arabs. And that's known in history. To the point, the Quran refers to this incident, that some of the pagan Arabs went to some of the Jews and said, you people are learned people. You're people of the book. Of course, they didn't know much about Judaism or Christianity or the Bible. They said, since you know about these things, by God, tell us, is our religion better or that of Muhammad? I.e., is idolatry that we practice better or the religion of Muhammad? What do you expect of any sincere Jew ask that question? A true Jew. What would be the answer? Would he say that idolatry is better than the religion of Muhammad? He might have his difference of understanding. But to say idolatry for a Jew who reads the Torah day and night, thou shalt not make an image of God. Hear, O Israel, our God is one. You know what the answer then? No, your religion is better. Because simply, it was not Judaism or the teaching of Judaism or Moses, but some were just hateful to see Islam rising and the mantle of prophethood is moving from the family of Isaac after so many times to the family of the other son of Abraham, the first son, Ishmael, as the Prophet Muhammad is the descendant of Prophet Ishmael. So that was a particular situation. And I really would like to say a word to my Muslim brothers and sisters here, especially Arabs, especially Palestinians. I know that there are cruel and brutal things done to the Palestinian people at the hands of those who are occupying the land of Palestine. I realize that. I know that many people are dying in hundreds in Gaza because of choking ordinary people from food, fuel, and basic needs of life. I know all this brutality since the occupation and the driving away of the Palestinians from their homes. Let us not take events that are taking place in a given period of time and impose that on an ayah in the Quran that speaks from all time and all kind of relationship. The relationship has been up and down, but one cannot say that it is to be generalized. Is there a good case made for that? Second, a more critical question. And that question was directed one time, again in Larry King, to one prince from the Gulf area who couldn't know how to answer it. He's ma'zur, probably. He didn't know much about that technical issue, really. They say that the hadith of the Prophet instigates violence against Jews. Why is that? They very loosely give you a statement. They said the Prophet said in one of his hadiths that before the day of judgment, there will be a fight between